Hey everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Diamond Discussion. I am your host, Demetrius Woods, and we're jumping into Hitting Myths Part 2. Part 1 was last month. Go check it out if you haven't already, but today is going to be a good one, guys. So with that being said, let's get it started. Okay, everybody, welcome to episode number 66, all right, on this beautiful December week before Christmas. I hope all of you guys are ready to celebrate with your families, your friends, your families, whoever it is that you're celebrating with. I hope it's going to be a blast and just hopefully good meals. And, I know that for this time, for me, I know some of you guys already knew this, and I appreciate your condolences. My grandfather passed away a couple of weeks ago, and so this Christmas without him is a little different, obviously. For my family and I, it's also a little different for my immediate family, my wife and daughter, and I'll get to the other part here in a second, because we moved to Nashville earlier this year, and so this will kind of be the first Christmas that we're having just the three of us plus one, though. Just had a good news. Just had our little baby boy, and he got here a week ago today at the time of this recording. I know you guys are watching this today as in on Thursday, but he got here last week, December 10th, made his grand entrance at 8:33 p.m., which ironically, I say ironically, just it's a God thing, I guess. My grandfather passed away at 8:33 a.m. Like I said, the week or so prior. So anyway, man, just crazy stuff. Wild, right? How family works and just how life works and how God presents himself in all situations. So my grandfather lived in a great life, and we were able to go celebrate him a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I guess now. And like I said, last week, my son made his entrance, and so Elliot is here, doing well. My wife is doing well. We got a little bit more sleep than last night or two, which has been nice as well. So anyway, all good things on that front, guys. Thank you guys so much for your condolences and your thoughts, your love and prayers for both situations, right? I appreciate all of it. But anyway, man, let's jump into this show. I think there is, there are often some common misconceptions around being a great hitter, but also just the fundamentals of it, right? And so I think that's where the misconceptions come on the advanced level of things, because we have some, just some habits that have been built at the foundation, right? And so one of those foundational things, man, that I always, try to get, out of the minds of some of the younger hitters as I'm doing lessons with them is that concept of squishing the bug, right? And it makes my bugs make my skin crawl in general. That concept being related to baseball or softball makes it even worse. Okay, so squishing the bug, I know we've all heard it, and maybe some of us have used it, right? And we've used it because it's such an easy cue, right? You think about the way that it kind of generated. It was because we wanted our players to ultimately stop lunging, right? We want them to stop lunging and to be able to keep their balance, all right? And so squish the bug became one of those little easy things for maybe the 4, 5, 6 year olds to remember and can think about, right? Because that's, I remember for me as a kid, like, I don't know if I squish bugs that much, but I mean, you see a cockroach or whatever, you're going to just put your toe, the ball of your foot or whatever on it, and you're going to squish it, right? And so it's just one of those things that you can remember as a kid. But unfortunately, that concept began to progress, I guess, gradually, from 4, 5, 6 year olds to 7, 8, 9 to middle school, high school, and now you got people squishing the bug, as seniors in high school, right? So again, we want to try to avoid that concept as much as we can, and really not even, maybe avoid's not the right word. We want to transition out of it, okay? Because it's not a bad concept at its core. Again, it protects us, little ones rather, from lunging, and hopefully it encourages, the little ones to keep their balance. But here's what it also does. All right, it kills momentum. Okay, it does not allow for any forward progress at all. And so when you think about, getting those hips rotated and right where you want them to be, your momentum is incredibly important. And so you got to be thinking, Let's get forward, then get the hips around versus just around, right? So ultimately, it creates this, or it encourages this spinning movement, right? Like you're a ballerina, or you're an figure skater, right? We're not trying to spin and twirl and do all this other fancy stuff, right? We want to really get. I'm sorry, I've got this image in my head of my daughter. She loves to play dress up right now. She's 6 years old, just turned six, almost a month ago now, which is wild. Anyway, so she's dressing up. She'll come in. We'll dance together in the kitchen or living room, and she'll be doing the spinning and twirls and all that. And I'm like, this, I'm not thinking that in that moment, but right now in this moment, I'm thinking that's precisely what we do not want to be doing when we're on the ball field, quote unquote, trying to squish the bug. We do not want to spin around and twirl. We want to really drive into the ground. And really what I think about on that front too is that really creates this, I don't know, man, this weird, feel that we have to pull the ball. Okay. And we do not want to be over dramatic about pulling the ball. And we'll get to that here in a bit on the next myth. But guys, stay away from the squish the bug. All right. When you think about elite hitters, okay, elite hitters, that back heel is going to come up naturally because of what's happening. Because they're moving forward, they're getting a little bit of momentum moving forward, and they're working off of that backside well, right? They're spinning those hips, and as your body moves, like it's supposed to, your heel is supposed to come up, right? If you're getting the proper torque on the ball, right? So that's what elite hitters are focused on, right? That energy's moving forward, not just around. And when I think about from a coaching perspective, I thought about a few maybe batting cues that could work, right? We're always, trying to figure out maybe these 1, 2, 3, 4 word phrases that we can use in the on deck circle. And I know one for me, that for younger hitters especially, push the ground, right? Maybe not squish the bug, but push the ground. And really what we're trying to do right there again is that we're trying to drive out of the ground. Use that ground as your momentum piece. Okay. Leverage the ground. It's there. So you might as well use it. Right. And the ground is hard. It's virtually an immovable force unless it just rained the night before and the tournament's still going on. Right. Then you're in suit potentially in the batter's box. But beyond that, it's an immovable force for you. And so use that, that friction that you've got there with the ground and just drive into it. Another one is finish tall specifically on that back leg, right? That's what we're trying to do as well in this sense of keeping our balance, garnering some momentum as well. One of the simple drills that I thought about to me that can really, aid in this is the one leg drill, right? That one leg drill where you start with the back foot only, okay? Start with the back foot only and then give a small hip turn into the swing, right? And you can do that, honestly, you can do that in slow motion, right? And then eventually of course, using the T work there, you can explode it through, right? And you can kind of feel that ground force, not a spin, all right? And I think that's important. Right now, one thing I don't want us to get in trouble with is that when we use that ground force, right, again, there's momentum forward and a spin, right, not just a spin. If we just spin, we potentially get that back shoulder dipping too much, right? So we don't want to finish leaning backwards right there at all, right? We really want to have a tall presence on that back leg. So that's why that's important to keep that tall presence so that we're not, we don't get in trouble in this sense of, leaning backwards on it. So I hope that helps you guys. I hope maybe that debunks that hitting myth, if you will. Right after the break, we're going to jump into one more as well. I've got 4 for you today, 4 total hitting myths to wrap up this hitting myth series and see, hopefully, guys, as this winter season is here now, really, you can use these to your advantage and also use some of these drills too. So be right back, guys. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again. Jumping right into hitting myth number 2 for today, and that is to hit the ball out front no matter what. Okay, I've heard this time and time again. I hear this in tournaments as I was coaching, and I've heard it from other coaches, just even online, of hitting the ball out front regardless. Okay, and I think that's just one of those where we cannot buy into that totally. Hitting the ball out front is necessary, but not every time, right? If you've got pitchers who can pitch and they're just not simply pitching the ball, middle in, then that doesn't work. Okay. So you want to make sure that that's important, right? We don't want to overgeneralize that concept. Yes, the inside pitch needs to be hit out front. That's important, but not the outside pitch. And really, not even the pitch down the middle is not technically out front completely. So I think about some of the things that really go wrong when we're overgeneralizing this concept rather, and it's one of the ones that drive me nuts the most as a coach is those soft rollovers, man, on the outside pitch, right? They just it's no good, right? It's no good. It's a soft rollover back to the pitcher. Maybe it gets to the right side, but usually it's just a little dribbler off to the left side because you've pulled out so much, and maybe you're just squishing the bug. I don't know, but you've pulled out so much, and you focused a ton on hitting the ball out front, and you just roll over, right? Or you're yanking the ball so far foul, like maybe your team's sitting in the third base dugout, you're a righty batter, and you somehow hit the ball into the dugout, right? Which is, I'm like, dude, you're way out front at that point, right? So I think that's one of the things that go wrong here. I think it encourages late barrel decisions. Ultimately, right? You're a little bit indecisive with some things. If you're completely out front and you get a pitch on the outer half, you're just not prepared for that. And so I think it ultimately provides weak contact, especially to the opposite field side, right? So we want to avoid this generalized concept, overgeneralization rather, that we need to hit the ball out front only, always, right? What I think you really want to think about here is kind of, I guess I would call it a contact map, right? A contact map would be where you take the inside pitch, the middle pitch, and the middle away pitch, right? Where do we need to contact the ball in those lanes, right? The inside pitch, we absolutely need to catch it out front early, all right? Early in the pocket there before it even reaches the plate, right? Catch that early in your swing. The middle pitch, maybe just a touch in front of your front hip. Okay, just before your front hip, that middle pitch should be able to explode off your bat right back where it came from. Okay, that middle away pitch, we want that thing really, let it travel, let it get deep. Really, that's one of my hitting cues is to let it travel. But you want to let it get a little bit deeper, closer to your back hip, right? Your swing does not change, okay? And I want to make that very, very clear. As you're swinging at a middle in or middle away pitch, your swing pattern should not change at all. It's just really about where is the contact taking place within your swing, okay? Because if you're perfecting your swing and you're getting it to where your sweet spot is and where you want, then you should be able to connect with the ball, a middle in, a middle, and middle away pitch. And some of you guys may ask, well, why do you keep saying middle, in away? Well, I think about the zone into thirds, right? We've got in, middle, away, and then we've got up, middle, down, right? The typical zone of hitting where we focus on the most is that middle, right? That middle from top to bottom is that middle third there, right? And then we've got in, middle, and out in terms from left to right or right to left. Okay, so that's think about those axis points, right? That's where I'm going when I say middle in, middle, and middle away. Things don't necessarily change, and we'll actually talk about this here in a few weeks about the 9 boxes that you have of a strike zone, right? That kind of that upper middle in, right? How do you attack that pitch well and be able to be effective? and not have that as a weak point to you. So we'll get into that here. We're in full off season mode right now, guys. So off season is really all about getting better, growing, and understanding where do I need to, pick up the pace a little bit, and also where do I need to, just continue to drill down, over and over again, because I've got it. But I need to make sure that, it's complete muscle memory at this point, right? So again, as I said before, we want to make sure that that contact point moves, not the swing. And when I think about elite hitters, like true dominant hitters, that's what they look like, right? Their swing path is a beauty, and it stays the same throughout. No matter wherever the pitch is located, their swing is what it is. They're just allowing that ball to get deeper at times, or they're catching it earlier up front at times, or again for that middle pitch just right before their front hip. And as I mentioned just a second ago as well, let the ball travel. That is one of my on deck cues. I know some people say hit it where it's pitched, right? That's the same little quick cue for a hitter, right? I think it's important though, as I get ready to go into these next two hitting myths, is that cues are not meant to just be standalones. Okay, hitting cues potentially are, we've drilled something throughout practice over the last week or two or month or whatever, and this is a cue specifically for you, the hitter, that works. All right, or a cue that that your coach says often, and you understand what he or she means. Right? We don't want to use cue as coaches, right? We don't need to use cues as in practice that much. Really, like you can maybe associate it together of what you're teaching, but the cue you can't just the practice can't just be, oh, let it travel. Well, what do you really mean by that? You gotta dig deep into these cues, right? So I think about maybe if you're doing a public speaking gig or something like that, right? You may have or doing an interview. You have some cue cards, right? Well, those cue cards are just a quick little reminder of what's really underneath the surface there of what you really want to dive into. All right, so think about it from that perspective. Coaches use those cues to kind of, quickly jog that memory while your player's on deck, or maybe even in the box. And they've had a couple of odd swings or whatever. You just want to say something real fast and like, listen, kind of get them refocused, reminded of, where do we go from here? All right. So anyway, guys, we're going to jump back in here with our third hitting myth here in just a bit. I'll be right back. Okay, good people, we are back. Just real quick though, before I jump into the third hitting myth, I forgot the drill to share with you guys. Just a practical takeaway here, which this is one of my favorite drills, honestly. So I don't know really how I forgot it, but I love a good T drill. I'm sorry for those of you who are anti-T, but it's so good to use, and it's really just on that previous hitting myth there. Take the T and just set it up into 3 stages, right? Work on that, get in your batting stance, and then put the tee rather, and load the ball onto the tee up in the zone for that inside pitch, so closer to you. Okay, and honestly, when I do this, I load it up right on the black. Right, it's a true inside strike. Like you got to be able to hit that pitch. Right, that ball that's on the black, umpire is going to give that pitch virtually 99 times out of 100 to the pitcher. Okay, so you got to be able to connect with that pitch and connect with it, with force and power and consistency. So put that ball up front early in your swing on the inner half. The second zone that I would load that is middle. And some people think that's right on top of the plate. No, sir, no, ma'am, that's not the case. It needs to be wherever your front hip is, just in front of it. Okay, so if you are up in the box a lot, then let's make sure that ball is middle of the zone, but also up with you. If you're back in the box, well, maybe it is on top of the plate already, or about to be. So just depending on where you like to situate, make sure that ball is just in front of that front hip right there for you. Okay. The last one is really my favorite, because I love the concept of hitting the ball opposite field. And so you want to load that, really I try to load it a lot of times the middle of my body. So wherever my legs are, okay, I try to load it in the middle of my body, right? Or you can think just closer to your back hip on the outside part of the plate. Um, what I also like to do with this is figure out how far out can I go without lunging and being off balance, because that's a good thing as well, right? A lot of times I'm always talking to my players about, especially with two strike approach, foul it off if you don't love it, right? That's one of my personal cues that I've used a lot. All right. And what I'm saying right there is that don't allow that outside pitch, all right, to sting you, especially put you in a situation where you've got a backwards K. You go down looking because umpire has expanded the zone a little bit, or maybe the catcher has stolen some balls, made him some strikes, or stolen some strikes or whatever that were balls. The pitcher's been established in the outside part of the plate, whatever the case may be, right? So start with that pitch on the black. You're going to have to hit that pitch for sure, but maybe even expand it a ball or two or even three off the plate out there, and see if you can't hit that pitch to the opposite field with a consistent, setting. So just a food for thought on that front. All right. Jumping into hitting myth number 3. All right. Number 3 here is a strong grip equals more power. All right. I cannot stand this one. Here's the reality, guys. That sounds logical, right? If you're not familiar with our game, right? Power equals strength, right? But that doesn't work that way. Okay. It really doesn't. Not especially in any case where high speed movement is part of the equation. You don't really want to get buy into that too much, okay? Because here's what that tension really does. All right, it truly slows your bat speed down, right? You really don't want to get into that setting where you're over gripping and creating so much tension where you don't have any wiggle room, right? You don't have any adjustability, if you will, right? If you're going to grip it so tight and try to whip around, so you don't have any adjustability, you don't have any whip, okay? So you really don't have a good strong swing, is what I'm getting at, right? So you want to avoid over gripping, trying to grip so tight, and ultimately that, to me, that's going to make you late on velo, right? Any pitcher who can pump it in there pretty good with a fastball or in softball, curveball, screwball, drop ball, whatever the case may be, like if they can pump it in, you're going to be late because you're gripping the ball gripping the bat way too tight. Okay, so what you want to do as an elite hitter to become an elite hitter, there, you want to grip it firm but loose. Okay, and I know that sounds counterintuitive, but here's what I mean by that. You really want the pressure to be in the fingers, not the palm, right? If we're in the palm, we can't really go anywhere else, right? But if we're relaxed, we're looser on that in general, and just allowing that bat to flow through the hands a little bit better. Now you're going to put yourself in a scenario where you can adjust late, mid swing, or what have you. So really, one of the talking points or one of my cue points can be relax until you launch. Okay, including your hands. Allow your hands to relax. Let those shoulders relax, man. Just be relaxed in the box, because the more tension you have in the box, the less effective you're going to be in terms of being able to hit the ball at a higher clip. Okay, so think about it from that perspective, right? Those hands, to me, you want those hands to tighten after contact. Uh, Somebody, if you're on the show and you're listening, maybe you disagree with that. Okay, and I'll come back next week and correct. But I would much prefer you have tighter hands post contact, because obviously you don't want the bat flying in your hands. But once you get to and through the ball, it's okay to have a stronger grip at that point. Okay, so one of the things that I wrote down here, I thought this was cool. I don't know really even know who said it or came up with it, but I thought it was about surrounding the idea of holding a bird, right? And you want to hold the bird tight enough to where it doesn't fly away, but loose enough to where you don't crush it, right? And that's how we want to think about the bat, right? When we're in the box and we're swinging, and kind of moving through our swing progression over there, think about that bat as a baby bird ultimately. Okay. The batting cue that I think about the most here is fast hands, not strong hands, right? So fast hands, right? Fast hands. It doesn't mean that you are, and I want to make this clear, okay? It doesn't mean that you need to make a fast decision or you need to rush, right? Fast hands does not mean to rush. It means just from your starting position to your point of contact, you want to get there fast, right? You want to get there fast, under control, and it needs to be a muscle memory fast, not a just random, oh my gosh, I got to get there fast, da, 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 right? Sometimes my daughter is 6 years old, and she'll be doing, we homeschool her, she'll be doing maybe some work or whatever. I'm like, all right, baby, we got about 5 minutes because we got to, maybe we got to scoot or we got to go somewhere or do whatever. And so she's like, whatever. And so she's like, she just does this noise or whatever. I'm like, baby, don't rush. Just focus. Okay. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to is just our level of focus on what we're doing in the moment, right? It's just making sure that we're dialed in. And as long as we're dialed in, it'll come. Like it'll actually get done pretty quickly. But if we rush, then we open the door for mistakes to be made. And, for my daughter, maybe she's going to get this simple math problem wrong because she's rushing, right? It's okay to have some pressure. It's okay to have a time limit on certain things in life. I'm getting to a life lesson here, but you want to make sure that you're not rushing, right, to the point where you're not thinking properly. So anyway, be on top of that. The drill I have for you here, it's a very simple drill. It's the bottom hand only drill. All right, you can use a shorter bat if you have one. If you don't, just choke up on your bat. Choke up on your bat and just work that. And it'll, to me, it gives you immediate feedback on that tension that you're going to have on the bat. Okay, so use that one. You can use this on one knee, so we can put that back knee on the ground when you're in your batting stance there. So put that back knee on the ground. Again, another T drill you can use here. All right, back knee on the ground, front leg extended, right, out, and giving yourself kind of some room to work the hips there as well as you do this bottom hand drill. And just like I said, use that tension, meter, if you will. Use that tension meter and understand how much tension am I really putting on the bat. Where is the tension? Is it in my palm? Is it in my fingers? Where does that lie? Okay. So as I return after this last break here, guys, we're going to jump into hitting myth number 4. And I thought you should know moment to wrap up the show. Be right back. All right, guys, we are back one final time here on the show. And the last hitting myth that we're going to go through in this series is that beloved concept of striding. Okay, you have to stride to generate power. Okay, that is false. Okay, it is completely false. Don't buy into that either. Here's why. Okay, I believe that in the early goings here, all right, the power and the concept of power, if you will, was tied to some type of a weight shift. Okay. And in order to have good quality power, you had to be able to shift your weight. All right. And then, obviously the stride itself, it really became a visible cue of that. Okay. And so that's where I believe that the stride came from. I think most of these myths come from a good place, and it comes from a place of simplicity, which is great. But again, we don't want to overgeneralize anything. And I think this is one of those where, coaches, we say, hey, man, you got to be able to stride. If you don't stride, you're not going to have any power. You're going to be weak to the ball. And that's just not true. So one of the things that I think truly matters here is your timing. Okay. Your timing is critical. All right. And it does not have to necessarily be tied to your stride or even lack thereof. Right. You can be somewhere in the middle. Right. Your weight transfer is what truly is important, but it does not have to come from a stride. Right. That hip torso separation, when you really think about that weight transfer, hip torso action, all timing, that can lead to the weight transfer, right? When you move forward and then you move around, That's what's happening, right? That's all part of that weight transfer setup there. So again, a stride is not it's not a necessity. It's really optional, honestly. A stride is optional in my mind. Timing is not optional. You have to have proper timing to be an effective hitter, right? Because at the end of the day, pitchers are there to disrupt the timing of hitters, right? Hitting is timing, pitchers disrupt that. And if you allow the pitcher to disrupt your timing, then that means you got to make sure that you go back to the drawing board to figure out where is it that am I missing on my timing. And a lot of times I've seen it be in the stride category. What does your stride look like? What is your timing mechanism in order to be effective? And honestly, when you look at, again, we keep talking about elite hitters on the show today. Some of them have no stride at all, right? If they have a no stride at all, they have, maybe they hover a little bit. If they do have a stride, it's a very small stride. It's not this big, just 2 foot, long step, whatever type deal. It's a, generally speaking, it's a maybe even a toe tap, right? And what you want to put yourself in position to do, guys, is just to have a really solid, strong front side, right? If you can get to a front side that is strong, then it doesn't really matter what your stride looks like. If that means you are already there, if you started there, great. Don't stride. You're already strong. Don't do anything else. Okay. So when you think about these these elite hitters, man, they're all loading. They all load well. Okay. They all stay centered, and then they all fire explosively, right? When they fire, they're gone. There is no returning, right? That's why it's so amazing to me to watch guys at the pro level and gals at the pro level as well check swing. Because once they have made that split second decision to go, they're gone, and they physically should not be able to return from that as hard as they are exploding. But that's a testament to their strength, their abilities, and their mental, what they've done over time to be able to have that muscle memory in order to be able to even do something as simple as a check swing, which I feel like is really hard to do, is to check your swing after you fired on all cylinders at that point, right? So again, man, that's what that looks like. Okay. One of the batting cues that I think could be useful is to say, hey, load then fire. Okay, in the on deck circle, emphasize the load first, and then have them fire from there. Okay, whatever the load may look like. If it's a long stride, and that's what works for that individual player, fine, that's great. But it's certainly not a one size fit all type, you know, uh, lesson, if you will. Okay, so make sure that you break that down per player individually for them, because for everybody, a long shot's not going to work. Everybody doesn't need the same thing in this. And again, if you can't go to the opposite end of the spectrum either and say, hey, this is one size fit all as well. Our whole team is not going to stride, right? Maybe if that works for everybody, but if that's not what works for everyone, and somebody needs a little bit of a toe tap, a little bit of something here, a little bit of a hover, a small stride even, whatever works for that player, you got to find it. Okay. You got to find it for them and find it with them rather. And for you players out there, you got to find that as well, especially right now. Right now, we're in the wintertime. Most people are not playing ball right now, I would assume. And so this is a time to get your body right. Also a time to rest. We prioritize rest as well. But when you are out there, outside or inside or wherever you are, working on your game, make sure that the timing part of things is part of your practice. And I think one of the drills that you can do here is, honestly, I love to experiment. Okay, I know for me, growing up playing baseball, I would not in games, but like if I was practicing, I would think about some of my favorite players to watch. And, I would try to mimic their swings, like what their swings look like, their batting stance, those types of things. And what that, honestly, I didn't know that I was doing this for myself, is that taught me different slots to start from. But what I always noticed though is that really they kind of got to the same spot anyway. So it really doesn't matter where you start. Okay. It matters that you start. A little cliche, right? But at the end of the day, you want to make sure though that whatever the drill it is that you're doing, okay, you want to make sure that either you're giving some intentionality, not but just in general, you're giving some intentional focus on a toe tap, or B, a long stride, or C, a short stride, or D, a hover, or no stride at all, right? Go no stride BP. See where you are on that. I love a good no stride BP session because that also teaches you, well, where are my hands going? I can focus just on my hands, right? My hands and my hip rotation as well, right? On the no stride. Because even if you are somebody who strides emphatically, a no stride BP session can still be as effective. So guys, I hope that makes sense to you. I really think that these hitting myths that we've gone through today and then last month as well are, they're beneficial to understand, because if you can wrap your mind around getting out of the, not even the old ways, but just some of those concepts that are a bit outdated, I would say, and that just don't work here today, 2025 going into 2026. Some of them do. Some of them are just basic understanding about hitting. And I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about these myths, right, that I've gone through, and that we need to kind of, for lack of a better term, lose. So anyway, guys, specifically for you coaches out there, just a last little tidbit here. If your player, man, if your hitter looks tight, okay, emphasize relaxation. Okay, focus on that for them, right? If they look rushed, focus on their timing. Okay, if they are out of place and just feel uncomfortable and they're just moving, get them to focus on that timing a little bit. All right, and then if they look spinny like a ballerina out there, then focus on that ground force. Focus on having them use that ground as their method of force, generating that power in their swing. So again, guys, I love being able to dive into these with you. I'm so pumped to hear from y'all about this as well. And again, man, if there was something I said today, check me on it. Make sure that if you don't agree, let me know why. Don't just be like, yo, Demetrius, that's so wrong. Well, let me know why you feel that way, and that way we can have some discourse, some dialogue on that front. I'm open book, man. I'm all about advancing the game and trying to ultimately impact everybody that's listening to the show in a positive way. And ultimately that means that we gotta hopefully find some common ground as much as we possibly can. So anyway, guys, with that being said, here's my thought you should know moment for today. Okay, and this is for all of you free agents out there in the travel ball world. What if you stayed on your current travel ball team? Just saying. Okay, what if you stayed right where you were? All right, and I asked that question not to encourage you to stay. I'm encouraging you to play the what if game. Okay, what if I stay? What if I go? If I go, where am I on the totem pole? Right? That's something to consider. Right? Where am I in terms? Where would I look like for this team? Right? What does this team have to offer me? What does my current team have to offer me? What does this team have to offer me that my current team does not? Okay. I asked this question also because we focus on team a lot, because team is incredibly important. I'm a team first mentality of a coach. And especially in a world where selfishness is part of the equation a lot of times, and we almost have to teach ourselves to be team oriented. However, in this moment today, I'm saying, look at this for yourself, but also look at this from the standpoint of whatever you want to call it, loyalty or benefit, whatever, right? What if you stayed? What does that look like for you moving forward? And if you can sit down and you can write a list of pros and cons, and maybe it's not worth going to these 3 or 4 tryouts this winter. Maybe it's worth staying exactly where you are. Maybe it's worth you focusing on you and getting better and your game, and not really necessarily focused on the next, offer that you can get out of a coach. Or maybe the grass isn't always greener. Now, again, some of you are not in that situation. Some of you need to get out of wherever the heck you are. But some of you are probably right where you need to be. You just need to lean into it a little bit more. So anyway, that's my thought you should know moment today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. And with that being said, we're going to wrap this show up like we always do each and every single week. So please let every single thing you do be done in love, because at the end of the day, that is really what makes this world go round. Thank you all so much again for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.